Hi everyone, and welcome to the Fire Mountain Gems and Beads Jewelry Making Studio. My name is Rose, and today we're talking garnets. Oh, aren't they pretty? You know that name, garnet, has the same root as pomegranate. I mean, look at them. Don't they just look juicy? They're beautiful beads. And we're going to make this pretty little garnet earring. This one has a little bit of a challenge because this is one of the harder things to do. This is a Briolette wrapped loop. It's a kind of a messy loop, which is super trendy right now. Don't think messy is bad. Messy is good in this case. And I'm going to show you how to do that one. Okay, so this starts with this little guy that I ordered at Fire Mountain Gems. And don't waste any of this. This is all good stuff. So the first thing you do is you cut off that tassel, and you've got that to save for another project. Set that aside. Okay. Then you've got these cool little metal dealy things here. These are French wire. French wire is basically a coiled up spring of wire, and you use it on the ends of bracelets or necklaces or something to protect whatever your stringing material is. This is good stuff to save too. Set it aside, save it for later. Then you cut these off, and I want to point out something very important here. Notice when you cut those beads off, there's this little tiny thread that went through that briolette. That does not mean to save this little tiny piece of thread. I'm just showing you that to you to illustrate how tiny these little holes are. They're tiny little holes at the end of that briolette, so you need to use some tiny wire. And because we're using tiny wire, that's why we're doing this messy wrap briolette loop, because the tiny wire, we need to strengthen that with some wrapping. This is a 24 gauge gold-filled wire. And if you click on the description of the video, you will get a list of all the materials we're using to make these earrings. This one, it says to use 3 inches. If you're very skilled, you can probably do it with 3 inches. I would recommend 6 inches to start with. So I'm going to cut off 6 inches of this gold-filled wire. And by the way, if you're brand new to this and you've never tried to do this before, I would actually recommend that you use some inexpensive copper wire for practice. So I've got 6 inches of gold-filled wire, which is a little more pricey, but we won't waste any of it either. I don't waste that stuff. No, 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 no. Okay, so I'm going to take my little briolette with this tiny little hole, put the wire through the tiny little hole about halfway. That looks good enough. I'm going to bend that into a U. Now be super careful with these briolettes. That's a very weak point right there where that hole is and that little narrow tip. So you want to make sure you never put too much pressure on that little guy because it will break. And hopefully it won't break until after you've gotten your wrap loops all in place. So I've folded like a little U shape around that. And I've made it into sort of a triangle, and I've got my tails of my wire going as parallel as I can. I'm going to take my chain nose pliers first, and right up here at the top, I'm going to grab both wires and make a 90-degree bend, just like that. Both wires. Then I'll get my round nose. And I'm going to put those right above that 90-degree bend and make my loop, going up and over the pliers. This is similar to the other loops that we've done in other videos. But this time I'm using both wires. So this is going to make a really strong loop up at the top. I'm going to reposition my jaws. They were like this. I'm going to take it out of the top jaw, put in the bottom jaw so that I can continue that loop all the way around. Now it's basically pointing away from me, still keeping the wires parallel. And now I can use my fingers because I have this nice long tail. I'm going to go ahead and use my fingers to start my messy loop. And this is where having a longer length of wire just is going to make it a lot easier for you. Just coil it around, trying to keep everything parallel. You want messy, but not so messy it looks like you messed up, but not perfect either. And you keep wrapping that around till you get all the way down till you almost covered up the hole in the briolette. And there we go. And you see, I don't have that much of a tail left, so I did really good. And with my fingers, my pliers, whatever I've got, I will manipulate this any way I can. I'm going to make sure that I put I'm going to put the cut in the back. So here in the back, let's see, make sure I've got this hanging the way I want it to. I like the loop that way. But again, be super careful. You're not putting too much pressure on the top of that briolette. Okay, now I'm going to trim off this excess wire. This is gold-filled wire, so again, I just don't want to waste anything. So I'll trim those ends off. These can go into your gold scrap drawer or box or bowl or whatever you've got to be melted down and resold, or to be resold and melted down, or you could just use these as eye pins. Just put loops on either end and they become eye pins. Set those aside because I don't waste anything. Okay, and I make sure that this wire where I cut it is nice and smooth. I can get a file and I can file that off, or I can just use my pliers, being careful not to put too much pressure, to push those in toward the briolette, because no matter what, you don't want the person you give this to get scratched by that little bit of wire. So there we go. A messy wrapped briolette, super strong because of the way we have two wires going everywhere. We need to finish this earring. So all we have to do now is make this link right here. So I'm going to grab an eye pin, gold-filled eye pin, 21 gauge, I think this one is. Be warned, some of these beads are teeny weeny, and they won't go over even this. So you might have to get your bead reamer out to make the holes bigger. And I'm going to put on this little tiny round bead. Little tiny round bead. A little tiny gold-filled bead cap. One of these nifty little faceted garnets. Those really look like pomegranate seeds to me. There we go. Another bead cap. Another one of these little tiny garnets. Again, those materials list is in the description of the video. You can get to a link that will take you to the materials list for this one. And that's our little set for a link. I'm going to make a 90-degree bend. This time I'm just using my fingernail. 90-degree bend. I'm going to nip off my excess wire. Better to make this too long rather than too short, because you can always nip off a little bit more. And nip, making sure I didn't fling that wire at anyone. Again, I'm saving this wire. This is gold-filled stuff. Save it. And grab my round nose pliers. And I grip this, depending on your pliers, where you want to grip it on the jaw, but wherever you grip it, the size of that plier, that's how big a loop you're going to make. Roll it back, reposition my jaws, roll it back again, making sure that that tail touches the stem so there's no gaps in that wire. That's another thing. You don't want any of your jewelry coming apart on you. And then double check this. I like to make sure that my loops are parallel. See how they're not quite parallel? So I use 2 pairs of pliers to get them oriented the same way. That's just a little more professional look, just a little more perfection that's easy to achieve. And there you pretty much have it. Now all I have to do is treat this like a jump ring, open it up, put it on this ear wire. Oh, I didn't show off the ear wires. Aren't they cool? These have the garnet built right into the ear wire. Perfect for your January gift person. That's the birthstone for January is the garnet. Close that up. Open up the other end of that link that you just made. Click on the link in the description below to subscribe to our email list and learn more about jewelry making techniques and supplies. Ta-da! And put on the beautiful little wrap briolette we just made. Where to put it? There it is. Close it up. And there you have it. Wasn't so hard, was it? A wrap briolette, messy wrap briolette for a beautiful pair of garnet earrings, perfect for gift giving for your January birthday person. Hope you enjoyed this video and hope you enjoy all these great videos. So make sure you share and subscribe, and make sure you see all the great videos we have to help you with your jewelry making techniques. Thanks for joining me. Happy beading.